Today, I want to talk about workplace myths that you probably still believe. And it makes sense because they're pretty prevalent and people have believed them for quite some time. Now, before I dive in, I'll ask that you remember to hit the like button if you like my content. If you have not subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you did so because it goes a long way in helping me continue bringing content like this to you. And I really enjoy doing that. Okay, let's get into it. Myth number 1. When you're getting ready to quit, you should resign with a resignation letter and give 2 weeks notice. Yeah, that's kind of old school, and that's a nice thing to do, but why? I mean, your employer fires you without giving you any notice whatsoever. And in my experience, when you tell your employer that you are resigning and that you're giving them a 2 weeks notice, they're going to ask you to leave right then and there anyway. Now, of course, nothing is always the case. There are certainly exceptions, and I have heard people say, my person wanted me to stay even longer. Let me tell you, that's the exception. Typically, you give that 2 weeks notice and they want you out of there anyway. And there's a good reason for that. A lot of times people do bad things during that last 2 weeks, and employers are concerned about that. They start downloading information and doing different things. And so there's a reason why employers say, you know what, I'm good. You can go ahead and leave right now. And sometimes they'll actually escort you out of the building. So the notion that you should give a 2 weeks notice when you're resigning is, not something that you really need to do. Instead, you should just ask to talk to your boss, explain face to face that you'll be resigning, and then that's that. And let me tell you about that resignation letter also. They're hoping that you'll say really nice things in your resignation letter. So to the extent that you are planning to file suit later, they'll have that to use against you. So you say something bad later on, they'll pull out that resignation letter and say, yeah, but you said this. So anyway. Myth number 2, hostile workplace means that you have legal protection from hostility from your boss or coworkers. That is a real misunderstanding of the law. Hostile work environment. I hear people use that term all the time, but it's a term of art. It's has a legal meaning. It's referring to protected classes. So if you go to work, let's say you are older and age discrimination starts at 40, for example. Let's just say you're in your 50s. You go to work, and every time you turn around, they're talking about you retiring. When you're going to retire, you are moving a little bit slower. Anything that's making fun of your age. And they do it so much that it makes it hard to work there. That's what we call a hostile work environment. When the atmosphere is just so bad and it's directed at a protected class. So I always use this example. It's not like they are complaining about your taste in music, because your taste in music is not protected, but your age is, age, race, gender, disability, etc. If they are making your life miserable at work with respect to a protected class, then they might be creating a hostile work environment such that you would be able to recover if, in fact, you could show that it was severe and pervasive. So it's step 1, it has to be an unfriendly environment based on your protected class. And number 2, it has to be severe and pervasive. So in other words, little one-off jokes is probably not going to be severe and pervasive enough. Petty slights, annoyances, it's got to be pretty bad to create a hostile work environment. So I hear people use that term all the time, thinking that it's something that is not, but there you have it. That's what we talk about when we talk about a hostile work environment. Myth number 3, when you talk to HR, they'll keep it confidential. Not at all. In fact, in my experience, when you go to HR and you complain about something, say you're talking about a manager, for example, and you complain to HR, as soon as you leave, they call up that manager or they go in their office and tell them exactly what you said. It's a shame, but that is how it works. HR works for the company. And if you don't remember anything else, remember that HR works for the company. HR is not your friend. And so there is no obligation on HR's part to keep your conversation confidential. In fact, under law, they have to investigate your claims. And so they are going to tell the person who you have complained about. Now, listen, you still do need to go to HR and complain, but just watch how you complain. Watch what you say. Be careful about how you convey the information to HR. You should talk to them as though you're talking to the person that you're complaining about because, yeah, you kind of are. Number 4, open door policies are for employees' benefit. Yeah, I am not big on those open door policies. You go in and you start pouring out your heart. You should never do that with HR. You go in and you tell them everything that's going on because they have an open door. And they say we have an open door because they want you to feel really comfortable. They want you to feel like you can come in there and just say anything. And that's not for your benefit, it's for theirs. So that they know who the problem employees are. And I can promise you, I should say I can almost promise you, I guess there's nothing that's 100%. But the next thing you know, they'll be targeting you because they know that you are a problem. So if you're going to complain, do it in a formal manner. Make sure you mention specifically what you're complaining about, age, race, sex. You got to say the magic word because if you go in and you're just complaining, they have no obligation under law to address every complaint unless you're complaining about protected class, for example. Otherwise, it's probably a better idea to leave that open door shut. Number 5. Companies are not allowed to give you bad references. And this is a big one. I mean, people really think that your previous employer is not allowed to give you a bad reference. And that just is not true at all. Now, the reason people think that is because companies tend not to do it. And the reason they don't do it is because they don't want to open themselves up to a defamation claim. You know, they say something bad about you and it gets back to you and you challenge it. Next thing you know, they've got a lawsuit on their hands. They don't want that. So most of the time they'll just use a third party and they'll confirm very specific things, date of employment, that type of thing, what your job title was. But it's not because there's a law that says that they cannot give bad information or negative information. So long as the information is true, they can say whatever they need to say, so long as it's true. Number 6, your employer can't make you do something that's not in your job description. That's just not true. And people think that all the time. Your manager can assign you any type of work she wants to, so long as they're not doing it in derogation of your legal rights. So, for example, so long as they're not saying all the women have to do this and the men don't have to do it, because that would be gender discrimination. So long as they are asking employees to do whatever type of work and they're doing it across the board, is not based on your age or race or some protected class, yeah, your boss can ask you to do things that are not in your job description. Myth number 7, your employer has the right to prohibit you from discussing your salary with your coworkers. Yeah, that's another one that's just not true. And what's interesting is a lot of companies apparently didn't get the memo because they do this. They will prohibit employees from talking about their salary and they get in trouble. You call the NLRB and tell them that's going on, then next thing you know, they've got a lawsuit on their hands. So they just don't understand that. Myth number 8, your boss needs to have a good reason for firing you. That's just not true. In pretty much all states except for one, employees are employed at will, which means your employer can fire you for any reason, so long as it's not for an illegal reason. But they don't have to give you any reason at all. And in fact, most employers will not tell you why they're firing you. They don't have to. Number 9, interns do not have to be paid minimum wage. That's not true. If you've got someone working as an intern, and they're doing actual work that you would actually have to pay somebody for, you have to pay them at least minimum wage. And there are a lot of companies who've gotten in trouble for taking advantage of interns, having them do work that they would pay someone to do and not paying them anything. Yeah, they need to be careful with that. Number 10, if you're paid a salary, you are not entitled to overtime pay. That's not true. Your salary is not what dictates whether or not you are entitled to overtime pay. The type of work you do dictates whether or not you're entitled to overtime pay. A lot of times employers will classify individuals as independent contractors or put them on a salary in order to try and get the most work out of them for the least amount of money. And that doesn't mean that it's right, though. So it just depends on the type of work that you do. And finally, number 11, at-will employment means you have no rights. This is what I hear at least 3 times a week. I live in an at-will state, and so I really don't have any rights. That's just not true. At-will employment means that you don't have a contract, so you can quit anytime you want to. And by that same token, your employer can fire you anytime they want to, with or without notice, with or without a good reason. That's just the nature of at-will employment. It does not mean you don't have any rights. Otherwise, we would never have any lawsuits, and I wouldn't have a job. See you next shift.